A mysterious girl, cloaked in darkness, brandishes a bloodied knife among a horde of corpses. So, a college freshman, attends his second week of university. All around him are newly formed couples flirting out in the open, but So remains maidenless. He finds an empty seat next to a girl in class, who makes no effort to hide her disgust. So doesn't mind being thought of as a creep because he takes solace in an app called Anonymous, a campus dating site. While looking at a girl he's had his eye on for a while, the class bully snatches the phone from his hand and loudly says that So is far too ugly to use a dating site. Humiliated, So snatches his phone back and runs away to the bathroom. He angrily slams the door in frustration, causing the other dude fighting the biggest battle of his life to tell him to shut up. So looks longingly at his phone again, and at the photo of the girl named Tsubasa. 2 months ago, So was swiping through Anonymous, but even though he found almost everyone cute, he just couldn't get a match. Miraculously, one evening he finally found one. Tsubasa, a girl who goes to the same university as him. He notices that she seems to hide her face in her photos, which he finds disappointing. Regardless, they hit it off surprisingly well, and So is confident enough to send her a photo, albeit a heavily edited sticker-laden one. In response, Tsubasa rewards him with a photo of her own, though her eyes are slightly covered up. So rolls around in bed in excitement, and even though he is suspicious that such a cute girl is talking to him, the upside is so good that he doesn't care. Over the next few days, So continues talking to Tsubasa. In one instance, she even left him behind a pack of cookies as a mini reward for doing so well on an exam. Back in the present, So decides to tell Tsubasa about the guys who bullied him for using the app. He decides to tell her some extremely cancel-worthy things, like wishing they'd die. Tsubasa surprisingly entertains the idea, and she even suggests listing ways in which they'd die to begin with. Though a bit unnerved and disturbed by the question, So decides to humor her. He describes Nishida being run over by a train while the others take their own lives out of guilt. Tsubasa reacts warmly to the idea, and So reveals that other girls have also complained about Nishida. Tsubasa jokingly says she's rather jealous that So cares about other girls, and her reactions are so cute that So wishes that he could meet her already. However, he feels no need to rush, because he is certain that she is in a certain class he attends, based on their previous messages. He tries whispering her name, hoping to get a reaction, and a girl, the popular idol Haruka, seems to react. He starts daydreaming about hypothetical situations with her, and the creepy grin he has on his face further reinforces his reputation as an S-class creep. He starts becoming overly conscious of the fact that any girl could be Tsubasa. It could be her, or her, she could even be right behind you. Mirai, one of his few friends in college, catches him with a weird look on his face. So tells him about Tsubasa, and Mirai suggests that he invite her to hang out since they've been talking for 2 months already. So works up the courage to ask her out, and though she is a bit embarrassed and hesitant, So forces the issue enough that she ends up agreeing. Later that afternoon, So spots Nishida by the station and a girl whose clothes look eerily like Tsubasa's. Suddenly, the girl pushes Nishida onto the tracks, right into the path of an oncoming train. He is killed instantly, and his blood splatters across the platform, painting it a bright red. So begins panicking as Nishida died exactly the way he described it. He tries looking into the quickly inflating crowd, but the girl he saw push Nishida has disappeared into a sea of people. Any of the girls here could be Tsubasa. His paranoia grows as he tries to find Tsubasa, but he eventually gives up and goes home. He tries telling himself that it was all a coincidence that Nishida died, but the moment he gets home, Tsubasa sends him a photo of Nishida's head, and she excitedly says that she took care of his Nishida problem. She begins badgering him for the praise he usually gives her, but So freaks out and throws his phone across the room. The next day, So is ridden with guilt. At college, his first class discuss in hushed tones Nishida's death, with some even being driven to tears. On his way to his seat, he overhears some of them showing each other photos of Nishida's untimely death, and So nearly throws up his breakfast in disgust. However, a photo eventually surfaces that places So at the scene right around Nishida's death, and rumors begin to spread that he might have pushed him off. So begins panicking, but Mirai arrives to ask him if anything's wrong. Mirai brings up So's supposed meet-up with Tsubasa, but So says that their plans fell through. He opens his anonymous app for the first time since yesterday, and his inbox is flooded with Tsubasa's messages. He attempts to delete his message history with her, but it won't let him. He then receives even more disconcerting news. Futami, another one of Nishida's accomplices, was killed. Though he was found hanging by a rope, multiple stab wounds dotted his body. So shakily handles his phone, and he accidentally opens Tsubasa's message. He sees a photo of Futami's dead body, and he begins panicking even harder. He complained about a lot of people to her, which means all of their lives could be at risk. Tsubasa, happy that So finally opened their messages, offers to fix more of his problems. Mirai looks over So's shoulder and sees the horrific image on the screen, and he confronts him over Tsubasa's involvement in the past 2 incidents. They head somewhere else and take a breather near a vending machine. So admits that he complained about Nishida and Futami to Tsubasa, which resulted in both of them being killed. So recounts that when he first matched with Tsubasa 2 months ago, he complained about the guy who started dating his crush and wished that he'd tripped down the stairs. Lo and behold, not a few days later, he actually did go and break his leg. So realizes that all his seemingly harmless wishes, such as wishing he'd know what was on the exam or wishing he wouldn't bump into certain individuals, are being granted by Tsubasa. So swears he didn't know this would happen. Unbeknownst to them, a girl behind the wall hears everything, and she grinds her teeth in agitation. Mirai lays out the cold, hard truth. A girl that So matched with is now going around killing people on his behalf. To prevent any more victims, So must find out who the real Tsubasa is. They take a peek into Auditorium C, which is filled with girls. So looks at them one by one, but he crosses each of them out as potential suspects. Mirai suggests narrowing down their search, but also knows is that Tsubasa takes one of Kimura's classes with him. This is just the smoking gun that Mirai needs. He points out that only sociology students take Kimura's classes, which means that they can narrow down their search to just those taking the same major as them. However, this may still take a lot of time, but Mirai knows someone who might be able to help. Later, So visits a small library where a young girl, Koku, is sitting. So admits that he may have some troubles, but he feels worried about asking someone he just met. Koku stands up and reassures him otherwise. She knows all about him already. A chill runs up So's spine. He's only just met this Koku girl, so how can she possibly know about him? This leads him to harbor suspicions that she must be Tsubasa. This is Death Note all over again. Mirai finally arrives, alleviating some of Sosuke's rattled nerves. To further allay his fears, Mirai asks Koku if she's ever used Anonymous, but she seems to have genuinely no idea what it is. So is convinced that she's safe, so he feels secure in letting her know about what's happened. They leave the room and head outside, and So pins all his hopes on her to find out who the real Tsubasa is. Outside, So recounts the deaths of Nishida and Futami, as well as Tsubasa's involvement in them. He apologizes again for dumping all this on a person he just met, but Koku shakes her head and explains that they've talked before. Before she can elaborate, Mirai apologizes on So's behalf for being forgetful. Mirai had hoped that Koku, who is usually tasked with collecting assignment submissions, may have an idea of who Tsubasa is, but she can't seem to remember anyone by that name. Koku realizes that this may be more difficult than they thought, so she begins by gathering as much information as she can about Tsubasa. So recounts the rather mundane messages he'd exchanged with Tsubasa, but a sharp pain pierces his chest. He was truly happy back then, but things have changed. Tsubasa is a murderer and must be brought to justice. So shares that he complained about a lot of people. Girls might be in danger too, since Tsubasa was evidently possessive of him. He also admits that he attempted to look for her in the past, but when he tried showing a photo of her to his classmates, they all shook their heads. Koku scratches her chin. The fact that nobody knows who she is tips her off. She hurriedly taps on her iPad and brings up news articles about a serial killer nicknamed the Girl Nobody Knows. The details of the case are eerily similar to what happened a few years ago. At a certain middle school, the culprit was said to have murdered everyone who was bullying the boy she liked. When the culprit was identified, people were reported to have said that they'd never met her before in their lives. This serial killer is extremely possessive, going to extreme lengths to murder her loved one's friends, family, wizard friends, and anyone who ever sold them pierogi, to slowly isolate them for herself. So suddenly receives a message from Tsubasa, asking if Mirai is someone who will be a hindrance to their relationship. Koku goes on to explain that this unknown girl finished her prison sentence the year prior. If this girl and Tsubasa are one and the same, then the person in the most immediate danger right now is none other than Mirai. Mirai thinks that Koku is joking, but her face says she's dead serious. Mirai begins to panic, as does So. So looks at Tsubasa's message again, fearing that if he doesn't do anything soon, Mirai will suffer the same fate as Nishida and Futami. Mirai is his only friend, and he blames himself for dragging him into this mess. He has to stop Tsubasa. He must. So asks Mirai to remain calm, and he shows him the message Tsubasa sent about thinking that Mirai is a problem. I don't know how anyone's going to remain calm after that. So types something into his phone and shows them that he plans to redirect Tsubasa's anger from Mirai to him, which he thinks is safer than her indiscriminately attacking the others. Furthermore, it will let them track her down easier if he is the only target. Koku is inclined to agree with his plan. So sends the text, and after a few tense moments, Tsubasa replies with a wave of Y's. Her texts become increasingly hostile and belligerent, culminating in her claiming that she killed all those people for his sake. So swallows hard, but he believes this is for the best. The three begin discussing their next course of action to deal with Tsubasa. However, Koku hears something moving in the shrubs, and she catches a glimpse of shining steel. She tells So that she saw someone watching them, and that they had a knife. She suggests that they go elsewhere to continue planning, and though So didn't know it yet at the time, it was a decision that would drastically change their fates. They head to the main library, a well-lit area with plenty of help to go around, or so they thought. Mirai is rattled by the sudden need to run away, but they hear the rustling sound in the bushes again. Koku looks toward the forest and tells them that she'll handle it. She pulls out a safety alarm and tugs the pin loose, causing a high-pitched whine to sound. Nearly the entire college hears it, and campus police quickly arrive on the scene. Koku points to the nearby woods for the officers, but their search comes up empty. They are safe for now, and So thanks her for her quick thinking. They return to the main campus, where Mirai suggests that they stick to crowded areas for safety. So expresses surprise that Koku carries an alarm with her, and she explains that a close friend of hers was once threatened by someone dangerous. They were worried for her safety too, so she was also given one. Mirai asks if a stalker was bothering her, but Koku declines to give any more details. So notices her tightly clutching her skirt, and he worries about her. They arrive at the main library, ensuring that they aren't followed. They begin their search for material related to the girl who nobody knows, but So grows guilty over involving Koku in all this, even though he was the one who asked her to help track down a psychotic serial killer. He is apologetic and promises to return the favor somehow, but Koku suddenly blurts out that he's her certain someone, but she never finishes the sentence. She changes the subject and excitedly talks about how their two campuses are split apart by the river that runs across their college. While searching for more literature on the serial killer they're tracking down, they run into a girl named Mitsu, whom Koku seems to know. So also recognizes her from the anonymous dating app he was using. Mirai jokingly says that it's a good thing that So isn't popular, lest Mitsu fall victim to Tsubasa too. Too soon, Mirai. So is surprised that Koku seems to know a lot of people, but that generally happens when you talk to other people. She even shows them a photograph of her and Mitsu on vacation, before they can look up some articles about the serial killer. Koku suddenly receives a phone call and excuses herself. She exits the library and answers a phone call from Mitsu. Koku tells Mitsu that So and Mirai are searching for Tsubasa. Based on the anonymous app on her phone, there seems to be some hidden connection between her, Mitsu, and Tsubasa herself. What's better than one psychotic Yandere killer? 3 of them. Koku returns to So and Mirai to help them research more about Tsubasa. So picks out a book of juvenile crime incidents and sits down with them. He seems a little troubled, and he asks Koku what her phone call was about. She replies that Mitsu was simply curious about So, since she previously found him on the anonymous dating app. While flipping through the book, they find exactly what they're looking for, an in-depth article regarding the girl nobody knows. 5 years ago, a series of murders occurred in a certain ward in Tokyo. The victims were slain in overt and obvious ways, such as by immolation, drowning, and stabbing. A manhunt ensued for the killer, but the perpetrator kept changing her methods, frustrating their attempts to track her down or establish an MO. The murderer became even more elusive by making her victims go missing. By coercing and manipulating one of her classmates as a shield, the perpetrator steadily killed the classmates around her, and none of them were the wiser. To further hamper the investigation, the killer also embarked on an ambitious misinformation campaign to spread confusion among the masses. The campaign was so complex and effective that the police ruled out children as potential suspects, further ruining any chances they had of finding her. It almost felt like the work of multiple killers. So is left speechless. Tsubasa must truly be a fiendish and crafty killer. Koku shows them the magazine, which also contains a snapshot of several suspects toward the end of the investigation. Their eyes are blotted out, but So is unable to concretely identify anyone as Tsubasa. He spots a familiar mole on a familiar spot on one of the girls, but try as he might, he is unable to remember who exactly she is. So asks to see some of Koku's notes, but he ends up seeing that she was looking at one of those teen magazine love tests. A flustered Koku claims she was just trying to look at it for a friend, and Mirai steps in and calls So creepy for looking at other people's notes without permission. Seriously, that's hella rude. Being in the library makes So somewhat nostalgic for what happened a few months ago, since this is where he first received cookies from Tsubasa. He looks up at the shelf where the pouch of cookies was, but he is horrified to see words written in blood, asking him if he enjoyed them. Another pouch of cookies rests in pristine condition. A stunned So is suddenly embraced from behind by a woman, sporting the same familiar mole he saw earlier. Who is she, and how does she know So? Her sudden arrival unnerves So, and Koku points out that she's the same girl in the photograph from earlier. A frightened So accuses her of being Tsubasa, but when she claims her innocence, he simply presses her even harder. He demands to know what she plans to do to him, but the girl points out that their hair colors are completely different. They don't even have the same mole. Idiot. She introduces herself as Saku, one of the girls that So had previously matched with on Anonymous. So finally remembers her. Saku explains that she was rather curious about what kind of person So was, but then she couldn't help but overhear him and his friend talking about the girl nobody knows. She's terribly interested, because she was involved in that incident all those years ago. She was a victim of that particular case, and though she doesn't know the exact name of the killer, she is confident that she can identify her by her face. At least that was the case 5 years ago. Saku also appears to be on the trail of the killer, and So wonders if she can be trusted. When Saku notices that he still doubts her, she shows him a photograph of her and her homeroom teacher, someone whom she cared very deeply about. However, due to the girl nobody knows, he was killed. So asks her if she has any suspects about who the killer could be, but Saku remarks that due to the time in between the incidents, the perpetrator could look radically different from before. However, she's sure about one thing. The girl goes to their university. Saku shows them her current 3 prime suspects. First is a girl named Ruri, who by far looks closest in appearance to Tsubasa. Second is a girl named Haruka, who seems to be a personality match for her. And third is Mitsu, who, with clever use of makeup, can easily transform her appearance to become Tsubasa. Koku defends Mitsu, and So notices that she seems to be acting more frantic and flustered than usual. Saku asks So who he thinks could be Tsubasa, and he singles out Ruri, whose clothes look nearly identical to Tsubasa's. Mirai knows a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy's cousin who was close with Ruri, so he offers to contact her. Mirai leaves the library to make the call, while Saku and Koku continue looking for literature. So wonders if Ruri could truly be Tsubasa, especially after he just bumped into her earlier. So receives a message from Mirai, but he becomes spooked when the text claims to be from Tsubasa instead. Tsubasa apologizes for saying mean things earlier and murdering all those people. However, Tsubasa claims she did one thing right by killing Nishida, because So started taking her more seriously because of that. So runs out of the library, and to his horror, he sees the bloody body of Mirai lying on the floor. Where the hell are the other students? Nobody saw this. So sees glimpses of Mirai's face as he cries out in grief. Saku and Koku respond to his shouting, and they see Mirai flat on the floor. Koku asks him what happened, and Saku suggests that they call an ambulance immediately. Instead of doing either of these things, So instead starts blaming himself for dragging Mirai into this mess. Mirai was the first person who bothered to befriend him, which is in itself a miracle. So hears footsteps coming from the second floor, and he sees a shadow figure in the distance. Believing that they must be Tsubasa, So stands up, leaves Koku to take care of Mirai, and runs as fast as he can to the second floor. He follows the elusive figure throughout the hallways and into another library room. He rushes inside, but he finds the room completely empty. He wanders around and ends up in the same area they were doing research in earlier. He returns to the shelf where Tsubasa had left him cookies before, but he notices that the bloodied writings and photographs are all gone. In its place is Mirai's cell phone with an eerie and morbid message from Tsubasa. He reads the message aloud. So, did you get good look at Mirai? I've been working so hard for you. I hope you'll only have eyes for me now. Silly Tsubasa, So didn't swing that way to begin with. Koku finally catches up to So and tells him that an ambulance is on its way. So shows her the message that Tsubasa left behind, but she suggests that they get out of here for now. They reunite with Saku, and they watch as EMTs carry him off to an ambulance. Saku warns So to be careful around Koku, since she also harbors suspicions about her. She shows him a photograph she took of the 3 of them in the forest, revealing that Koku had an ongoing call on her phone. So can hardly believe it, but it's not surprising. He's an idiot. Saku admits that she was the one spying on them earlier, but when she noticed that Koku was acting strangely, she zoomed in on her hand, revealing that she was in an ongoing call. She suspects that Koku had an accomplice moving behind the scenes, and that accomplice is likely Mitsu. This is entirely possible, as it would be impossible to place those cookies without knowing So was in the library at the time. An accomplice would make it possible. Saku asks him about the person he was chasing earlier, and he shows her the phone with Tsubasa's message. After learning that Koku caught up to him moments after he found the phone, She points out that Koku could have planted it while he was chasing the mystery girl. However, Saku still doesn't know what their goal could be. She hatches a brilliant but extremely dangerous idea. Saku tells Koku that she and So will be checking on the crime scene to see if they missed anything. She suddenly grabs So's hand, and Koku's eyes become warped with hatred. Saku brings So away and warns him that they should leave immediately. The library is built like a maze, and it would be dangerous for them to stay any longer. It dawns on So that Koku was the one who suggested that they go to the library, and he suspects that it all must have been a ploy to take Mirai out of the equation. Saku brings So to her motorcycle and instructs him to wait there while she changes into her riding clothes. Have these people learned nothing from separating while a serial killer is on the loose? So still has doubts about trusting Saku, but he always has doubts. Dude probably still doubts the world is round. Saku miraculously returns alive, and together, they speed off. Saku plans to go to the police because, even though Koku claimed she did, they never came. Furthermore, while Saku was busy calling an ambulance, she witnessed Koku messing with Mirai's clothes. So alerts her to a car crossing the intersection, but to Saku's horror, her brakes aren't working. They inevitably slam into the car, and though So struggles to his feet, he eventually passes out. He sees a girl walking toward him, all while cursing that it was all a trap. After what feels like an eternity, So wakes up to see a cigarette-smoking man shaking him awake, and he has some questions for So. So is shaken awake, but the last thing he remembers is being on a motorcycle with Saku. After a nurse instructs the man to put out his cigarette, So realizes that he is in the hospital. The man begrudgingly snuffs out his cigarette and reassures So that all his injuries are superficial, though he still needs to be in a wheelchair. He introduces himself as Jen, a detective with the Metropolitan Police Department. They head outside, where Jen remarks on the nice, clean air. 2 days have passed since So's motorcycle accident. Jen expresses his sympathies for So getting into an accident, and he gives him some good news. Saku is recovering well. So asks about Mirai, and Jen reports that he is alive, but in critical condition. He then goes on to point out that a lot of people related to So have been attacked recently, like Nishida and Futami. So wonders if he should come clean to the police, but he fears that he will also be punished for instigating the attacks, even unknowingly. Jen drops the caring facade and confronts him about his involvement with the murders, pointing out that a photo was taken for him at the scene where Nishida was pushed to his death. Jen knows that So held a grudge against Nishida, and it is entirely possible that So contacted somebody else to do his dirty work. A perp pretending to be a victim is not unheard of after all. Jen reveals that a man recently turned himself in for the murders of Nishida and Futami, the attack on Mirai, and the accident So and Saku were in. But this isn't Louisiana. He isn't buying it. The more Jen investigates the alleged culprit, the more unnatural it all seems. Before Jen can press So any further, Saku intervenes. So explains that Jen is from the police, but Saku asks him to come back another time. Jen puffs his cigarette and politely leaves. As he passes by Saku, he recognizes her from the girl nobody knows incident, further convincing him that the only one who could have planned all these murders is So himself, a man turning himself in for the crimes. Koku suspected of being Tsubasa. These are just a few of the things going on in So's mind, but above all, he wants to know, who exactly is Tsubasa? Saku attends to So in the hospital, as her injuries weren't as bad as his. She explains that it is easier for passengers to be injured on motorcycles, as evident from the concussion that So suffered. Saku asks him for more details about Jen and why he's so interested in Tsubasa, so he decides to come clean with her about everything. Saku reassures him that she told the police that he was innocent, and she tries to cheer him up with some dessert she bought from the hospital store. So is surprised that someone like Saku has a sweet tooth. She then tells him that he had an unexpected visitor, Haruka, the university idol. Haruka reported the accident to the police, so she only came as an obligation. Saku asks him if he is friends with her, but he denies ever talking to her before. So asks where his phone is since it might contain new messages from Tsubasa, so Saku offers to help him pick it up from the front desk. The desk nurse returns So's belongings to him, but among his wallet and ID, his phone isn't among them. Mirai's phone is inside instead. He wonders if it flew off or if the police took it, and Saku notices him lost in thought. He explains that the phone he's holding isn't his but Mirai's, but to their knowledge, Koku stole this phone. Saku explains that the man who turned himself in for the crimes is denying involvement in Mirai's attack. Furthermore, the weapon used to attack Mirai, a baseball bat, was found half buried near the library. However, even the police know very little about Koku, who was reported to have disappeared immediately after the incident. Beyond this, Saku knows nothing else. They still don't know who tampered with her motorcycle. Sako suggests that So check what's on Mirai's phone, which conveniently does not have a lock passcode. Mirai was supposedly calling a friend who knew Ruri, which they deduce must be a girl named Rika, based on the time. So continues scrolling through Mirai's call history, which all seems to be girls. However, he becomes shocked when he sees a call from Mitsu, whom Mirai earlier claimed he had never met before. What is Mirai hiding?